created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, the text, and then there's big metaverse stuff. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
It's important to understand that it is a tool, like any other tool, that we need to learn how to master and use, right? I mean, I like hot butter biscuits, but I'm not trying to cut the wheat and churn the butter. I'm not. Right? So what we really need to understand is, how do I master this tool and how can it help me? Speaking earlier when talking about in the small business space, here's one thing that everyone should take comfort in. If you're good at your business, you are an expert, you are the subject matter expert at your business, then using these models can enhance what you do. Validating the results that the model give you from different lenses, from a compliance lens, please reanalyze this, from a governance lens, from a public opinion lens, right? So that the zeitgeist of whatever is happening in the world, you kind of get a decision. It's not the only decision. You as the subject matter expert have to decide, is this the one we go with? It's not like I'll just take its opinion. It'll have, your product will have an opinion based upon not just what's out there, but how you structured your prompt. Because a prompt is only as good as the persons who wrote it, right? And then the various lenses that you apply to it for what you want. You and I can be in the same business, but we have different groups that we cater to, or different market segments that we cater to. The same prompts will not get us the same answers. If they do, we're in trouble, because I'm a real estate guy trying to sell $1 million homes. You're a real estate guy trying to sell $300,000 homes and sell a whole tract of them. We shouldn't get the same answer, right? So mastering how to use the tools is something I recommend for anybody, whatever field you're in. If you're in a daycare, be able to look at any given area and determine what the current birth rates are for your area that your daycare is in, and what the median income is, and understanding how much does a person need to make before they can afford you. So there's so many places that AI can help the average person. So I would say to anyone, don't let the train take off without you.
Yeah.
Lucky, what are you thinking, brother?
Oh man, it's been so much good information, and having Drew here, and Keyshawn and Bobby, it's just you get so many good perspectives. What I see is that there's so many new avenues, new territory, new frontiers, and what I see is more like a Lois and Clark, and we need something like Sacagawea or maybe fast forward like a Jarvis that says, okay, look, I already know what's bad out there. I'm going to try to guide you in the right direction. But it's hard to say, that we have a model that can guide you through all the models that kind of make things clear. And that would be a benefit to all of us. But until then, we're all in discovery mode. We're all trying to figure out, hey, don't walk down that swamp. There's alligators there. Or, hey, don't go down that alley because, there's people out there that don't want you there, and they're going to try to take you anything and everything you have. Yeah. And that's all a new discovery. But at the end, again, I go back to, you get what you put in it. It's hard to say that you're going to design a model and say, I'm going to make my own Jarvis and it's going to treat me well and it's going to guide me the right way. The reality is that, sometimes things burn as you go through and learn. And it's going to be a discovery of how you can use these tools to augment whatever you do in life. There's not going to be a one answer, hey, just follow this road and just follow the map or the arrows and they're going to get you to the right place. And so that being said, everything's going to be discovery with AI. There's a lot of tools out there to augment what you do and what you're trying to do, whether you're an entrepreneur, if you're an electrician. If all of a sudden now Lucky says, I don't want to be a cybersecurity guy anymore. I want to be an electrician. How do I get to that point faster where I can be a master electrician? And it's not gonna solve the answer and cut time for you, but it's gonna give you a roadmap of what it takes to get there. And you still got to walk that road. So it's just another way of augmenting, basically another tool in your belt that helps you make better decisions in life. And I think we need to focus in on that. It's not going to be the answer. It's just going to be a way to get the answer.
Well, that's where the smart AI community comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can remember, as far as I'm learning it, 10 years later, I would say I think I'm scratching the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know enough because I taught statistical learning thinking that I wouldn't be challenged. I was challenged heavily to say, like, I think I know how to spell statistical learning. That's about it, right? You got to go beyond that. You got to understand machine learning. You got to understand data sets. So, Drew mentioned Hugging Face and Kaggle, right? You go to Kaggle, you get lost instantaneously.
Yeah.
Go to Hugging Face, you will be lost for days. You go to archive.org, try to read a title. Forget spelling. You're going to quit high school because archive.org has so many titles that you don't even want to finish reading, right? So,
don't bother with the research papers, right? People who are trying to talk about research papers are not actually doing code. I'm just going to tell you that flat out, right?
So
look at the repos and look at the example code, right?
And
because
I think
that's the real world.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because you go to all these places where actual work is being done. That's where the value of what's coming next. And I would say the Smart AI community's mission has been to educate people through a community of practice, to get them to understand that it could take somebody 10 years to learn just something simple. But that's because 10 years later, it's a little bit more simple, right? So we all get to that point eventually, but how fast do we get to it is what benefits us. And that's how Smart AI community stance is, that how do we simplify it enough for you, fast enough for you, so that way you can move on to the next one, which is to say, now that I understand AI, machine learning, data processing, data usage, and data resting, once I understand these little data topics and AI topic and machine learning topic, all of a sudden I've simplified it enough. And this is what we do as subject matter expert, Lucky, Bobby, Musako. We all meet and say, let us simplify what it is that we've learned over the years, so that way you can move into what it is that you actually have to work on, which is the hard part of specializing based on your need. So if you're in the data center industry, you're in the semiconductor chips industry, I can tell you, I've sat down with semiconductor chips people that develops chips for AI use cases, and they do not know much about AI. And I will challenge you to go find that for yourself, because that's the case actually. Because you can engineer hardware very well, but you still have to learn some of the things about data, AI, machine learning, and how they are processed, why they're processed the way they're processed. It's a lengthy spectrum. I think Dr. Drew started off with that Model T shape, right? You have lots of knowledge. All of a sudden, it dips into a T shape and comes back up. And all of a sudden, it looks simple enough, right? But you have to do that dip time to time, that T-shaped drop, to get to a core of it and say, you know what? I tried it, but I got to come back up to the surface and try something else, right? So SMART, we have this thing called advocacy, right? This advocacy means we want you to advocate for something that you will do a deep dive into for research and training purposes. So S for specialist, M for methods, A for advocates, R and T for research and training. We help you to research and train for something that you want to be a specialist in. So you want to have that T-shaped drop. That's where you come in and say, now that you guys help me understand what it is that I need to research and train, now I know how to go research and train instead of wasting 10 years in it. I'll probably spend 10 hours or 10 days, 10 weeks in it. And now I'm good to move into something else that I can say I can specialize on. So I know we have a few more questions to go with Dr. Drew, but wanted to plug that in for Smart AI community and get some more questions out of Dr. Drew. Anybody have any follow-up questions for Dr. Drew on any of these topics? because I have a bunch of them.
Well, Drew, what is your perspective on? I know you brought it up, but data vectors, and training models. There's been a new territory now, and providing, trustworthy data vectors, and the industry saying, okay, if you're going to train your model, here's some good data sets. But what are those data sets that people can start to look at and say, hey, I can start looking at this as opposed to just the open internet? What is a trust? What is an area where I can start to trust and develop, a trustworthy, we'll just say ethical, but a data vector that's trustworthy and that we could start to train data on? What areas have you explored there?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. And I mean, I'm gonna, I don't want to rat hole on the vector part of that. Because I mean, there is, just to give you an example of why, right? I mean, there's an interesting, very nerdy, very boring conversation to talk about, word embedding and vector indexes and RAG. But I mean, frankly, give you an idea, right? At the summit 2 weeks ago, Databricks literally showed something called Agent Bricks, where you literally pointed at a bunch of agents or a drive, like a folder that has a bunch of JSON documents in it. And then it literally will learn what your taxonomy is based on an LLM model that understands basic business concept, and ask questions to help get, and you can add additional things to the system prompt. And then boom, it now has something that understands your stuff, right? So, I'm not saying that vectors are dead. I'm just saying that, there's some interesting alternative approaches that are kind of evolving that work. But we'll talk about trustworthy data because that's a huge topic that's very important, right? So, I mean, there's nothing that's better than the data that you have, right? If you're trying to automate a tech support job, you have to have tickets from your ticket management system where you can see the conversation that's happened, right? I mean, I've seen, one solution, a place I work, sometimes they get like 5 sentences on one case. Sometimes they get 500 sentences, right? And so looking at trying to build from what you actually know, right, is the best environment, right? There are what are considered in the industry, right? If you start talking about the topic of evaluation, right? Like, in the grandpa days of machine learning, right, there are things like precision and accuracy and mean average error percentage, right? Those quantitative things, right? There's now literally one quantitative measure for almost every task, right? Whether you want to translate, whether you want to summarize, whether you want to, complete code, right? But at the end of the day, all of those are based on expert models. In other words, you throw your model at a known data set that has, a user prompt, and then what the system's supposed to come up with, and then it judges how well yours is against that, right? So if for most businesses, right, that's not what people are in the business of. People are trying to take something they're already doing and remove labor from it, or be able to have, not have to buy labor for a lot of level 1 agents, so you can start having chatbots escalate to tech leads, as an example, right? So, what's interesting is that there's evolved this new thing, and again, if you don't know about ML flow, doesn't matter what level of modeling you're doing, it's a good technology to learn, and it will require Python. But the point is that evaluation is essentially in Gen AI, it's crazy, right? You are literally having to many times do what's called LLM as judge. In other words, if you want to judge what is coming out of your Gen AI agent, right, you have to basically have humans set up criteria, say, this is, on a 5-point scale, this is a 5 because blah, 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 a 4 because of blah, blah, blah. And then that basically becomes a few shot learning to be able to, judge the task in the human terms that you give it, right? So, certainly you may get slightly going back to that, every LLM is a different child, right? You may get slightly different behaviors with different models, but from my personal experience, reference data sets are really research topics, and you have to look at your own standards of what you have to do, which is one of the reasons why I call myself Dr. Doom when it comes to these modeling things, because it's so easy. In 2 weeks, right, you can take a corpus and you can get a chatbot working that does some basic interactivities that makes it like, oh, I don't ever have to read these documents again. It understands me. But you start bringing in 5-10 people to ask more questions that you didn't think of. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, you've got twice as much work just to work off of that 10% of the types of questions, right? Because anything that's wrong is going to stick out like a sore thumb. So, it's, as the CFO was saying, right, where it all still comes back to data, right? If you don't have enough data to be able to automate one of these problems, you're not really ready. And even if you do have that data, between the iterations of different stages, and then even if you get to the point where everything works, you've done lots of broad testing with bringing every joker and scumbag in to throw stuff at it that their mother would be ashamed to see. Then there comes the problem of cost, and then you're like, okay, well, if I go a cheaper agent, how much do I lose, and how far do I have to start over the whole process, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong just on even if you're ethically being right in the process, just because it is so complex. And I don't think that it's fair to minimize that risk, because the more, especially when the bar goes and you have to start bringing in GPUs. You want to talk about expensive. If you have to add more synthetic data to a hero run where you've already burned, 1,000 GPUs for 24 hours, and you're like, oh, we're missing our mark. We got to do it again, right? That's, that's a lot of hat in hand. You got to go back to your boss on, right? So, it's you just got to be careful.
And is that where, when you're setting those weights, where if, a simple model can start to see what people are, it's more becoming a common term, and where your AI model starts to build hallucinations? Sorry.
Yeah. So, for starters, one of the reasons why ChatGPT, DeepSeek, other places like that hallucinate is because there is and this goes back to your basic physics as far as where the metric comes from. But most what Databricks call foundation model, like Maverick, like Sonnet, like Mixtral, that's a core meat and potatoes base model for building your Gen AIs, right? You can tell it, hey, literally chill, right? The metric is called temperature, and you want to set it to 0, right? Because then you're saying, look, I don't want to hallucinate. I don't, there's some things like if you're writing ad copy because you're an entrepreneur and you want to have some, razzmatazz of language, right? You want diversity. You want stuff to come out of nowhere. Hell, you'll take a hallucination if it sounds good. You gotta, if anyone's tried to do a creative process, right? Sometimes you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You got to have a lot of bad ideas before you get a good idea, right? But you can manage that. But the hard part is that because ChatGPT is marketing itself as being better than humans, right? And also people are not, there's people see the promise without reading the fine print. And I think that there's a lawsuit right now because somebody presented a legal case to a judge that listed precedents of cases that were completely imaginary. So it's it's something that it is, if you're willing to take a deep breath and look at the fundamentals, you can easily avoid it. But the problem is that a lot of us are, like a boss called me once, ready, fire, aim when it comes to AI. And, that doesn't always end well.
Drew, you said something that I think a lot of companies aren't taking into account when they're saying, hey, we're going to, add AI chats or AI robots to kind of augment, human capacity or human capital, as some people call it on the balance sheet. One thing that you can't account for or put a monetary dollar against is institutional knowledge. There's a lot of individuals that may be forced out, and there's a lot of institutional knowledge on how things really work outside of the SOP. I think for all that are military, they know like you have the SOP on how M16 works, but sometimes you get down range, it don't follow the SOP sometimes. And sometimes you have to figure stuff out on the fly. And this is where I feel like, AI or chatbots won't be able to compete with humans. Is how do you build that institutional knowledge, and how do you solve a real-time problem working with a counterpart? And I think, we are many moons away from an AI being able to solve something on its own without approval, and creating lag time between, your chain of ecosystem between you and the customer. So I think ecosystems and institutional knowledge is something that's not also being considered as we replace, employees with AI chatbots.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, going to what Asif had been through on statistics, right? And kind of to go into some of the temperature stuff, right? It's still under the covers, right? It's guessing a long sequence of guesses based on all the language it's ever looked at before. I think that Simon Pegg, who played Scotty in the first reboot of Star Trek, he said that AI makes a lot of mediocre. And when you're talking about experts, right? Experts are something that it's not very good at, because having an expert is not something that easily compresses into a bell curve, right? You need a long tail of information that you keep for those edge cases, right? That's why you keep the hobbling people around, because they've seen it all. What's the saying that, good judgment comes from wisdom, wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? So they've made, and the problem is, unless you can put it on a row to feed to a server farm, it doesn't exist, right? And that's the hard part.
And that connects right back to, that being your own subject matter expert. No one knows your business better than you. No one knows what you want your business to look like better than you. So, and
also,
So, I'm
sorry. No, please. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that it's important, especially when you talk about risk and dollars and cents, et cetera, for anyone out there who's a leader. A good leader is willing to accept risk. They just need to know what the risk is, right? At the end of the day, it was an actress that says sometimes something good has to fall apart for something better to fall together. I am afraid of risk-averse leaders. Like, they're terrified, right? Because nothing great's going to happen here. I can guarantee you that. So,
right.
Yeah. So even in your own business, understand. It's not that you don't want risk, but you want to understand the risk and then know when is your back away point, and let's go a different direction. So,
yeah, and you bring up a great point that just inspired me in understanding how people can take control of their careers and embrace risk, right? Yeah. I'm sure Masako can tell you, that reading the Lean Startup just to be able to understand how to do small batch is still no replacement for the seat of the pants idea of basically having to take it as far as you can go and try to, instead of you fitting into the world schema, right? Trying to articulate a vision and then find what other people can what nature can bend to the light that you give, right? So, one example I have is that I had a student from Divergence where I met Misako and Lucky and the Seif indirectly that, was a Marine, only had one lung, only graduated from high school, but he was passionate about, he wanted to learn software, right? And so he embraced being self-taught and being confused until he got stuff done. And he not only became a data scientist in sports analytics in, of all places, Puerto Rico, he actually was able to change legislation because he caught accounting errors of professional CPAs and MBAs, okay? Because he cared enough to do the dirty work, right? And the idea that you're just going to get away from that as an engineer is not going to help. And I think that any military person who has a passion and a vision and can find some sample of data, they can at least do enough groundwork to be able to help put themselves into a category to see some of the same things or the exact same tasks they're going to do in a real world job, right? And the better they do them in practice when it's just for their own satisfaction, the more that's going to shine through to show the attention to detail that will get them a job. So
I think through this conversation, I found $1 billion idea. And if you guys want to invest in it, and let me know, because we're going to get started. No, look, the problem that, you mentioned, Keyshawn, that knowledge, right? That knowledge management, as in, if you had a human working in your industry for 30 years, that person knows what can go wrong with M16 in all environments, that it cannot be written on a text, right? So I used to run a armory. I used to run a firing range in the military, and I know they don't have enough books to talk about what could go wrong with an empty space where people just come to shoot guns at. Like, knowledge management is core component of success that the companies that has been looking at ChatGPT for the last 2 years are still saying, okay, cool, but where's the memory? How can you not remember what happened here 2 years ago? How can you not recall what day of the week this is? Right? Like, remember ChatGPT when it first came out, it's told you, I don't know what day of the week this is, right? Because it wasn't connected to the internet. And all of a sudden it was connected to the internet, and people are like, okay, that's cool, but that's like Google search. It forgets everything in 2 minutes later, right? It doesn't have that memory. Remember, if anybody's an entrepreneur and you're looking for an idea to invest your time into, like that gentleman from Puerto Rico did, LSTM, long short-term memory. If you can fix that memory issue, not just the whole thing of it, but some of it that enterprise can say, look, your ChatGPT is cool and all, but it cannot remember Bobby's name because Bobby is the freaking CEO of this company and he was here. He established everything infrastructure-wise, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know that, I don't have any use for ChatGPT because you cannot hire the next Bobby for me. You cannot hire somebody smarter than Bobby to come and take this institution to the next level for succession, right? You don't have that LSTM. You don't have that ability to recall those memories. I can't rely on RAG anymore. I can't keep relying on cache augmented information. I can't do that. I need a archival level of memory recall, as in whatever I've archived, not like Dr. Drew, I think you put it very beautifully, a bunch of AI agents that's sitting there in a folder and you can point right at it and all of a sudden it's learning. That's the level of engagement we need. We need somebody to come into this industry and say, let me fix your memory problem. Because without it, you don't have any intelligence. And the reason we are human as intelligent is because how we are able to skip memories in order to get to the original memory. So you don't have to think too far away from that. You just have to study your brain a little bit and figure out how our memory works and put that inside of ChatGPT and make that work. And I think that's $1 billion industry waiting to happen that ChatGPT hasn't been able to really find out yet. Lucky, you're on mute.
Well, you need your 10 Guy Kawasaki slides, and then I can ask the tough questions I'd ask any as being the jaded venture capital.
Well, I already quit, Drew, because you know you're going to grill the hell out of that.
Hey, look, I'm just letting you know what to expect, right? I mean,
my SWOT analysis will be on point until you show up. And they're like, oh, I didn't see that at all.
Well, better hear it from me than before you put on the suit and fly out to the conference and spend, hundreds of dollars on the booth just to be told your idea didn't get workshopped enough, right? I mean, your partner is supposed to tell you before you leave the house you're wearing that, right?
Right.
That's what you gotta do, man. It's all good. It's tough love. Just look at it that way, right?
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And when talking about the whole institutional knowledge piece, as this is the beginning of an industry, we really need to look at what are we retaining? Are you trying to retain lessons learned, right? The Army had this whole command, the Army Center for Lessons Learned. And we used to call it, when I was teaching at the NCO Academy, the greatest place to go to learn everything that no one ever looks. Because we would put all this stuff in there, but nobody. So when the students would have a test and we give them a scenario, they got the internet. They can go to the Army Center for Lessons Learned and get the answer. None of them did. None of them did, But what I know about institutional knowledge is not only its value as far as helping from the day-to-day, but just if we can leverage over time what we have. I was working in Rock Island Arsenal, and there was a lady, Army Material Command. There was a lady who was retiring. There was not a problem she didn't know how to fix because she kept binders on everything and what went wrong and what they did to fix it. Upon her retirement, she, a couple of days before she retirement, I caught her at the shredder shredding all her books. And so I'm fighting with this old lady who's like, no, you can't. And she's like, none of you are worthy of my knowledge.
Wow.
Yeah.
If I can't have it, nobody will.
Yeah.
She's going to take it to the grave, right? So the thing is, how do we now, as people, you're growing your business, how do you use AI tools to help you start to gain over time some form of institutional knowledge, right? Because what you learn from messing up is just as valuable as what you learn from getting it right. So those are some good places that I would love to see tools go.
Yeah, actually, I think what you get wrong is what you end up remembering, and you end up building that knowledge that lasts, because those scars hurt. Getting it right, it just sometimes is just too easy, and you just skip over it because it was easy. And, the big thing on institutional knowledge, we're having a lot of people, I'm not saying this is just the churn of life, that are retiring now. And these were the mainframe programmers and developers, that knowledge is gone and we'll never get it back. And it's easy to be flippant and say, well, Microsoft, but no, it's not a Microsoft world. We need to retain those guys, but it's a sad story. Those guys are the ones that hurt me the most. Seeing those guys that were at the beginning, the guys that were working on mainframes and developing the tough answers. There wasn't a Microsoft knowledge base or a Q article or, best guide. They just had to figure it out. Those are the guys that we're losing, and those are the true treasure in our world.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Their garbage collection was for paper outside the desk, right? I mean, because they had no room for error, right? I mean, I heard about NASA guys that they got 3 tries for a compile because that's all they could get time from on the mainframes, right? So at some point, you have to decide when you're gonna move to the 21st century, I suppose. But it's a shame that there's that loss there for sure.
Well, guys, we have some time for last thoughts, so let's go around the screen here. But let's talk about it like this. What is that you would like somebody who's not in your expertise field to take away from this conversation? I think that's important, that we have a takeaway and maybe a call to action. Lucky, you want to go?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I run into these meetings all the time. There's not a quick, easy fix to AI. As much as someone wants to just think that we can just pump out an AI and then check that box, there isn't just checking that box. There's easy ways of going about it. You can try to buy a caught solution. Somebody did the work. I don't know what was done. It's almost like a black box, but it's not. But it is a black box to you because you don't know what's the ins or outs. You just know that it works because you paid for it. Or you do the hard work of developing your own AI, stepping into the world and finding out the intricacies of what is and what isn't. And that's a tough place to be if you're not from the AI world. I'm saying you don't have to be, but you start stepping into it and you start to realize, what is realistic. And that's the picture that you have to start to kind of put together is what's realistic, because it's never going to be a checkbox. And if you're in that checkbox world, it's going to be a tough future for you. And I hate to be pessimistic on that, but hey, sometimes it hurts. Tough love.
Tough love. Keyshawn?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I think for anyone to take away from this conversation is that there's more than one entry point to AI. Whether you're moving the dirt to build the data center, whether you're working in supply chain to source the raw material that goes into it, whether you're the blue collar worker of an electrician or a plumber that's physically putting the cables and units together, whether you're sitting on the software stack, moving up the value train, there's more than one entry point to AI. So if you're really passionate about how do I fit into the space, just align the entry point to what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about construction, project management, that's your entry point to AI and everything that comes with it. And you just learn as much as you possibly can. But outside of that, that's the biggest thing I just want all people to take away from. There's more than one entry point to it. It can feel daunting. Don't be afraid to leap. I'm a great example of a person who leaped 6 years ago into technology and have no formal background in AI, but here I am today.
Masako?
Oh, I would say it always starts with that one question: what can we build together now?
Yeah.
So with that question, what can we build together now? Then that activates within me my unique talents and gifts that will bring that space to allow me to leverage my knowledge, to enhance my knowledge, and then connect me with guys like you for us to work in the space that is unique to each of us to build something magical. Because when I think about it, when the title of semiconductors and AI, I was like, quantum computing, right? If we're in that metaphysical space, then we have the capacity to ask that question. And source energy will serve that up to us. So that's what I have for you. What can we build together now?
And Bobby, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's really important for all of us, wherever you are in your journey, to know that what you got is what we need. So bring all of you, flaws and all, because what's a flaw to you is perfection to a very different solution. So I've made a lot of mistakes and a lot of great discoveries in this journey of just technology as a whole. And I cannot tell you the number of times just being open to other folks who thought they had nothing to offer completely turned around our situation and gave us a super amazing outcome. So come, you're good enough, you know what you're doing, and whatever it is that you do, and it's needed. If you're present around whoever you're present with, and you're trying to come up with a solution, you have something to offer. Give it, please.
Dr. Drew?
Thank you. Lastly, I just want to say that, I always told my students at Divergence that, it's important to understand that you are not in competition with the people that you're trying to get a job in the same pool for, right? You're in a competition with your former self. And that you have intrinsic value that is unique from the entirety of your experience. And the question is, how can you tap into all of that? And there's a Japanese Buddhist phrase called Hendoku Uyaku, right, which is turning poison into medicine, right? How do you transform yourself into something, to express yourself in a way that sets you apart from the crowd, right? That can take many, many forms. And the bottom line is that the more heart, the more passion that you can bring into any project that you're looking at in any technical direction, right? Because technology is not a destination. It is not a checkbox. It may feel like a badge while you're getting them, but they don't end, right? You know, every 2 years you got to do it again, right? And they change things again. So, you know, the idea, getting used to the journey being the destination and embracing novelty and knowing that something you learned this year, like, you know, 12 years ago, I invested very heavily in R, right? That lasted about 5 years in my career, right? Something may come around and make Python not compelling. I'm not betting on it, but you know, the point is that you do what is the best approach for what you're trying to get done, and just be aware that every little thing you learn in any direction is going to help you in another direction. So,
yeah, wow. Well, my call to action to everybody here is that please come back and let's have part 2 of this conversation, because my goodness, I don't want it to end. But I know somebody's got to go to sleep, including me and my kids.
yeah.
So I think the last thing I want to say is that it's challenging, right? But against your former self. I think that's what Dr. Drew said, right? It's challenging for your former self, because if you think you can't, you won't. But if you start at you can't, that means you got to work up to, yes, I did, right? How many steps does it take? Well, I guess you can look it up on ChatGPT. So call to action is go to ChatGPT and type in, I can't, but how do I, right? So thank you all so much. But, you know, if you want to get energized again, go for it. One more time.
Yeah. I really appreciate everyone.
There's my shaman right there, brother.
Thank you all so much.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night. Man, great seeing you.
Take care, folks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be
Bye,
back.
y'all. Bye.
Created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm, and
I think you will have a whole